Hi everyone, and welcome to Queer Soup for the Soul, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Nat, and my pronouns are they, them, she, her, and he, him. And I identify as a queer, gender fluid person who's also on the asexual spectrum. And I'm also a registered dietitian. So today I've brought you into my kitchen so that I can walk you through one of my favorite soup recipes. And we're going to talk about some of my experiences in food and nutrition, being a queer person, and sort of applying queer theory, or you can think about it as like queering food and nutrition. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you have the ingredients at home, we can sort of get started with what we're making. So we're going to be making a chicken soup, just sort of a classic. It's very warm, it's very comforting, and the reason why I went with soup is it's such a fluid sort of dish, and it really is open to interpretation. You can do a lot with it. Really, anyone can make soup their own. And one of the best things about soup is, if it's a little bit too spicy, you can balance that with a little bit of sweetness. Or if it's a little bit too salty, you can balance that with some unsalted broth. Or, if you find it is a little too bit bitter or anything, you can always sort of taste and modify as you go on. And I think that's just such a beautiful analogy for queerness. And when I'm talking about queer food, it's less about the food and more about the people who are at the table with you breaking bread. And soup is just one of those sharing foods. I think it really brings a meal together. Sometimes it's a meal on its own, which this will be a meal on its own. And it's just a wonderful way to bring something comforting to the people around you, which, again, as queer folks, queer and trans folks, I know that's really, really important to us to sort of find that community. And you can use food to find that community as well. But I'm going to stop yapping for a moment, and we're going to get started. Now, first things first, when you get into the kitchen, is your tool. So your major tool is going to be your knife, and it's really important that your knife is sharp, and that's for safety purposes. With a dull knife, you really have to put a lot of effort into your chop, and that can essentially be not a good situation for your digits. Now, if you don't have a sharpening block or anything like that, I have heard that you can use the bottom of a ceramic mug to actually sharpen. So you want to sort of do like fluid motions. Again, we're all talking about fluidity today, but you want to do fluid motions with that. Now, I've never personally tried the bottom of a ceramic mug or plate, so if someone does try it, let us know in the comments. I would suggest maybe using a knife that you're not super attached to, just in case it doesn't work super well. But again, just because it's a rough, uneven surface, it should do the trick. But sometimes the internet, when you find something on the internet, it doesn't quite work out the way you planned. But anyways, a sharp knife, really important. And then your kitchen, I guess, stance is important. You really want to be confident with your tool. So like drag queen confident, like drag queen who just won RuPaul's Drag Race kind of confident. So you really want to hold the knife with that confidence, because that's what's going to give you control as you are chopping. So one big tip that I've learned is actually putting your thumb on the blade of the knife, and that really allows you to have control. And I really like this rocking motion when I'm chopping, and you'll see I'll use it as I go through to sort of, again, bring me through the item and then back around and through, again, fluid motion. So I'm gonna grab an onion from the fridge. I realize that I haven't put it out in front of here yet. So I'm gonna grab an onion. Beautiful. So for all my Shrek fans here, I'm gonna go over the ingredients quickly. And again, I did mention that this is a chicken soup. I'm gonna leave the chicken in the fridge because food safety is important, but you know, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, or you just don't eat chicken for some reason, or you're looking to cut back on your meat consumption, you would be more than welcome to use lentils instead of chicken, and a veg broth instead of a chicken broth. Now, I do suggest using green lentils, also known as French lentils, just because they're a little bit heartier. They're not going to like disappear in your soup, which sometimes you want, but in this case you want something with a little bit of, you know, oomph to it, a little body. And so, yeah, so French lentils, they'll cook up nice in your stock, and it'll still be, you know, filling like the chicken soup would be. And the great thing about lentils is they're also a wonderful source of protein, so that's fantastic, but plant-based protein. But today, or for my version, we're going to stick with chicken. And if anyone has any questions about how to make a lentil version, it's really, really similar, but you would just have the lentils in and make sure that you cook them in the stock. But if you have any questions about that, just let us know in the comments and I would be happy to answer those for you. Okay, so let's get to some of the cooking. So again, we're going to start with an onion. So onions are notoriously difficult to chop. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, so this is your onion here. You've got sort of like a hairy end here. We're all about body hair positivity here. So you're going to leave that on, but you're going to take sort of like the top part off. So there you go. And remember, with your confidence there. And so what you're going to do is, again, you're going to want to slice your onion in half because this is not a very safe surface to be cutting on at this moment. So you want to give yourself a flat surface. So you want to sort of straddle the onion here and you want to chop down. And again, confidence is key. So go for it. And this is quite a large onion here. And I think we're only going to use, at least in my version, I think I'm only going to use half because I only have a sort of medium-sized pot and I don't want to go too overboard with my ingredients. So now you just want to peel your onion here. I'm going to just sweep this off to the side here. Great. Now for the fun bit. So we're going to want to dice our onion. So these are like a dice size, like small little squares, but not super, super small. You know, it's still going to give you like a chunky bite, if you will. And so the way that we're going to do this safely and efficiently is you're going to want to put your palm of your hand on top of you know, sort of the apex of the onion there. And you're going to want to do 2 slices this way. So like this and like this. And try and get them to be relatively even. If it's not perfect, I'm not Gordon Ramsay. I don't really care if your dice isn't perfect. But the only reason why people do care about that is it cooks slightly less evenly. But because it's a soup, it's going to be stewing on there. And, you know, it's going to be delicious anyways. So you want to do 2 slices. So you're going to do your one here. There you go. And your second. Beautiful. Great. And then you're going to want to turn it towards you. And you're going to want to make slices along the top. You know, maybe 4 or 5 or so. It really does depend on the size of your onion. And I'm quite short, so you're going to see me pop up. So counters are designed for cis men who generally tend to make them. Yeah, so they're usually made for like the 6-foot man. Cis man. And so for me, they don't really work out that well. So I need to pop up on my toes because I really want to get some leverage when I'm doing this. I want to make sure that I really can get down into the onion here. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you'll notice that as I'm going through, I'm curling my fingers like this. And the reason for that is as I'm slicing, there's no way for me to catch, you know, a fingernail or, you know, the fleshy part of your fingertip, which, you know, I particularly quite enjoy. So I'd like to keep it, and I'd like you to be able to keep yours as well. So once you've done your top slices, you're going to want to move down the onion just like this. And again, you're going to want to get chunks, oh, you know, about this size or so. Again, it's called a dice. I'm not sure if that's related to it being about the size of a die, but it would make sense to me. If anybody knows, let us know in the comments. There we go. Sometimes the end bit won't, like your slices won't have made it, so I usually just chop that up at the end there. Great. So you can sort of place things into bowls if you like. That's what we call doing a mise en place. Or you can leave them on your cutting board if you're comfortable with that. For the aesthetic, I'm going to grab 2 or 3 bowls here just to make it look a little bit prettier. But again, you really don't need to do this as you're cooking at home or wherever you are at the moment. So there we go. Putting my onions in there. Great. Beautiful. Perfect. Now we're going to move on to, I'll leave that here. Now we're going to move on to carrots. I've got 2 carrots here. One of them is sort of like a red carrot, or purple, sorry, and another one's an orange carrot. Now, typically I don't peel carrots. You know, I just don't really see the point. I think their outside, their motley outside is beautiful, and I don't really see the point in wasting it. But if that's your preference, amazing, totally fine as well. So we're just gonna pop off the tops here, like that. And I mean, this part is really up to you. It depends on how chunky you like your soup. I'm sort of on the medium chunky side, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut my carrot, maybe I'll cut it like this first. And I'm gonna cut my carrot in half, lengthwise. And so I've got sort of like a moon shape here. And then I'm just gonna run my knife over it like that. Great, oops. Got another carrot on the way. There we go. And I'm just gonna continue to do that. Beautiful. And so, I'm sure you're probably like, okay, so when are we getting to the, your food journey part? I promise, I don't want to get too distracted while I am slicing because, you know, I want to keep my fingers intact as well, if I can. But, you know, I was interested in food at a younger age, so mostly eating, love to eat. And my grandmother is Ukrainian, and so, you know, food was a part of our family life, but not a huge part. So for me, I think that the reason why dietetics was so interesting to me and really compelling was that I had the inkling of queerness in high school. I knew that something wasn't quite the same as my peers, but we didn't have a GSA. I knew very little, very few people who were queer, and if they were white cis gay men, and I didn't think I was gay, and so it didn't really didn't really make sense to me. And so it was just, it was really a confusing time. And I think for me, the way that I dealt with both some gender dysphoria that I realized later, as well as just discomfort with the possibility of, you know, having a sexuality that was outside of the quote norm, was to use food as a way to have some control over my life. And, you know, it opened a lot of wonderful doors. Like I wouldn't necessarily go back and do it differently, but it definitely was a time in my life that was quite harmful to my body and to my mind. And I was also dealing with some mental health stuff at the time, but in the same vein, not really super aware, not really super willing to explore it, or able to explore it, really. And so I really wanted to get into this program because I was like, if anyone's going to teach me how to restrict, anyone's going to teach me the, you know, the way to find control over food, it's going to be this program. It's going to be becoming a dietitian. Like, if anyone has the answers, it's them. And so I started this program, and at the beginning I was like really excited, and I was one of those people that was really like, I want to know what is in this celery. Speaking of which, we're going to start chopping up the celery. But I wanted to know like every detail, how much sugar, how much salt, what sort of vitamins and minerals were in it. And so I think that really propelled me at the beginning of my program. But as I went through, I more and more became suspicious that I might be a baby queer. And so once I had finally admitted that to myself, it's amazing how quickly my eyes just opened, and I was like, what am I doing? What, like, I have been just hurting my body here for so long to fit into this body norm that I thought I had to have. And let's be honest, I still have a lot of thin privilege, and I do want to make that known that I am aware. But, you know, I really wanted to fit into this ideal because I didn't feel like I fit anywhere else. So I was like, well, at least if I could have some control over my body and the way that it looks, then maybe I can present in a way that nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to see that underneath things aren't exactly the way, they don't follow the heterocisnormative societal norms. And so once I sort of let go of that and explored my queerness a little bit more, it really helped me move away from some of more of my more restrictive habits. And I mean, at the same time, I was also, for the first time in my life, really addressing my mental health as well. And so that had an impact on it as well. So we've done sort of our mise en place here. And so I'm going to start getting my pan heated up, or I guess I should say my pot. This is not a pan, this is a pot. And I'm going to prep some of my garlic here. Great, so garlic is one of my favorite things to prep, and notoriously, garlic, like the onion, give tons of flavor, really, really fabulous. However, they are difficult to deal with sometimes. So, especially getting the skin off, I find. So here's my trick. Again, giving yourself that confidence. You want to have the flat part of your blade up against the garlic. So garlic on the table, flat blade. And then you can either crush down like that. If you're tall, I do still need to lift up, or you can give it a good smack. So I'll use another piece of garlic here. So you can go like that if you'd like. It really flattens it, but it can hurt the palm of your hand. So, to each their own. But the nice thing is then the skin comes right off. It's wonderful. And then when you are sort of mincing up your garlic, you can sort of cut off the little end there. And I just like to run my knife through it. Maybe I should move this so you would be able to see. That would be a great idea. I'm just going to move this over here. Intermission. And so you're just going to run your knife like this over the garlic. Great. Fantastic. And again, over the garlic like that. And over the garlic. And I'm using about, 3 cloves, but to be honest, I'm not much of a measure. And I find soup, again, a wonderful thing about soup is that if you don't have these ingredients, if you've got parsnips instead of carrots, or, you've got shallots instead of onions, soup is really open to those sorts of changes. And again, with that sense of fluidity, that's again one of the reasons why I chose soup today. But yeah, if you're not a fan of garlic or something like that, totally fine. If you don't have these specific ingredients, you can really sort of pull any sad, wilted veg out of your fridge and make something wonderful. So that's why I love soup. But anyways, back to garlic. So you just want to run your knife through it like this, and you can even sort of bop your knife over top if you're feeling RuPaul level confident. There we go. Amazing. Great. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. It's soup. Now this soup is going to be a clear soup, and it's not going to be blended. But particularly if you're making a blended soup, the chunks really don't matter because you're going to be popping either an immersion blender in there or you're going to be putting it into the blender itself. So we've got everything more or less ready to go here. I'm just going to show you some of my other ingredients. So I'm going to put this over to the side just so you can see properly. So I've got some olive oil, which I'm actually going to put a good glug of it in here. Again, not much of a measure, but a tablespoon or two. It's up to you, really. If you have vegetable oil or really anything, any oil would work okay. I mean, maybe not like a sesame. It's got quite a powerful flavor that we're not necessarily going for in here, but hey, the world's your oyster. Go for it. If you think it's gonna work, try it out. If it doesn't work that time, again, modify, taste it, see what happens. And so we've got some hot oil here, and you might be wondering, okay, are we gonna get started? We are gonna get started. Now my favorite way to test if your oil is hot is to take throw some onion in there, is to take a piece of onion and to put it in your oil. And if it sizzles, which you may be able to hear, if it sizzles, that means it is ready to go. So you want to pop your onions in there. And some people might put their onions, their carrots, and their celery in at the exact same time. I always find that if I do that, my onions don't quite get soft enough. So I always like to do my onions just a little bit beforehand. And you don't want them to brown, you just want them to soften. Beautiful. And so we'll let those go for a little bit. And I promised I would explain some of my other ingredients. So here I have chicken stock. So I made this myself, but you can purchase some from you know, the grocery store or wherever. So I made this with similar ingredients to what we're using. So celery, carrots, onions, garlic. I used chicken backs for this, but really if you're cooking, let's say some chicken thighs, and you have bones left over for that, a lot of the time I will just take those bones and use them in the stock. It doesn't necessarily get you quite, you can see that the color in this is quite rich. So if you're going with the bones, it will give you a bit of a clearer stock, but again, it's gonna still have lots of flavor, and you know, you're reducing food waste at the same time. Great, so our onions are sweating here in the back. I'm gonna add in our celery and our carrots. There we go. Beautiful. And it already smells so warm and comforting in here. And that was another reason why I wanted to do soup, because it's been a year. Yeah, it's been a year. And you know, there's sometimes you just want a hug and you can't get one. We're very lucky here in Nova Scotia, but you know, sometimes you just can't. You've got family far away or friends far away. And so I do sort of feel like soup is kind of like a hug in a bowl, especially chicken soup. And it's just so wonderful and comforting. And so that's why I wanted to share this recipe with you folks today. Great, so give that a good toss. Now, I always like to season as I'm cooking, so I'll throw a little salt in there. But that's just me. Now, you might be wondering why I haven't put the garlic in yet. So garlic is really interesting, and it burns very, very easily. And if you've ever had burnt garlic before, it leaves a very, very bitter taste in the mouth. So we're gonna leave that. We do wanna saute it with our veggies there, but you kinda wanna add it in for the last like minute or two. And again, it's gonna cook in the stock with everything else as well. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just grab some rosemary and start thinking about chopping that up. And maybe I can talk a little bit more. Hopefully you can hear me over the sizzle. If not, I'll just turn my audio up for this section, I guess. And I want to avoid the woody stem if you're using fresh rosemary. If you're not, then you don't have to worry about that. But I just realized that I was cutting the stem at the same time because I was distracted. So I'm gonna give it a good chop. Now, rosemary will sort of jump on you when you're chopping it, which can be frustrating, but just go slow. Again, we're making something calming, we're making something warm and comforting, so really like, take your time, absorb it, soak it in, really just cut it with care, you know? And if it goes a little on the floor, whatever, right? So I'm gonna give this another stir. Great. Amazing. Beautiful. And I've got that at about medium heat. I'm not sure if I mentioned that or not. And so we are going to pop in our garlic here. There we go. Oop, voila. Amazing. You do not need to pick it up on the knife. You can put it into another little bowl. That's just the way that I personally do it, but if you don't feel safe doing that, do not feel like you have to. There we go. Great. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure where I left off in my story here, but again, I was coming into my queerness, and it really helped open my eyes when it came to the way that I was using food as a means to sort of inject myself into mainstream society, to sort of stay safe almost. And that no longer served me. So I went through some really, really tough looks at food, and I was pretty disenfranchised from the whole sort of institution of dietetics for quite a long time, and it's only recently that I've come back into it. And that's, you know, where I've sort of learned more about like food justice and food sovereignty and body justice and health at every size. And movements like that do have their issues, but, you know, for me that was very eye-opening. All I had learned about in school was, I mean, I learned a lot of very interesting scientific things, but it was quite heavily focused on weight loss and body size, and less on things like the social determinants of health. You know, we didn't really talk about someone's finances. We did a little bit more as we've gone into the counseling side of things and learning to speak with clients. But again, it wasn't top of mind. So that was something that it was a journey for me to get to the place that I am today. Just gonna pop in the rosemary there. And I'm sure that many of you are on your own food journeys, and it can be scary, but it can also be really wonderful, and if I may use the pun, nourishing, to sort of come to those realizations. And, you know, understand that people's bodies, you know, they are the source of knowledge of their body. You know, no matter of schooling can overwhelm someone who has lived in their own body for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, right? They are the expert on their body. So it's important to listen to people when they talk about how their body is feeling, or, you know, if certain foods don't work for them, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna put in my stock here. Actually, I'm gonna add in my thyme first. Voila. And again, not much of a measure, so I'm just gonna do a bit of a pinch here. And if I feel like it needs more later, I'll add it in. Again, it's soup, it's fluid. We can change, we can modify, all that lovely stuff. There we go. Yes. Amazing. And you can see that there's quite a bit of fat still around here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add maybe a little bit more water and sort of get the good stuff out of there. Great. And again, you might be wondering, like, oh, dietitian saying like chicken fat, good, I want all of that in the soup. You know, again, every body is different, but the great thing about fat is it is super, super crucial to absorbing a lot of vitamins and minerals, which is fantastic. And it makes food taste good, which is super important. You know, we don't necessarily take into account all the time the mental health benefit of having food that really, you know, that we're craving, that we need in that moment. That's what I was talking about when soup is like a warm hug, you know. Sometimes you just need that. And I think, you know, we've been told a lot to really disconnect from our bodies and our intuition, and that might sound a little woo-hoo, but, you know, your body knows what it needs, and you know, it's important to listen. You know, if you have the capacity for that right now. Again, this is all just me chatting again about my experiences, like learning more about what my body needed. And so if any of this does not speak to you, you do not need to take it. You can just watch the nice queer person make some soup. Beautiful. And so I'm going to turn this up a little bit because I do want it to come to a boil, and then we're going to turn it back down so it simmers. And to continue, you know, the story didn't stop there when I finished university. You know, I left university and I was still feeling very uncertain about how I wanted to view food. And, you know, I had learned more and more, again, about the topics that I had mentioned earlier about, you know, making sure that everyone has access to food and to income, and sort of those broader social determinants of health, like race and gender. And speaking of gender, that's sort of the next part of my journey when it came to sort of food and queerness. And you know, as many queer people do, I'm just going to keep an eye on this because I can notice that it's boiling. There we go. So I'm just going to put it on a simmer there. And yeah, we're just going to chat. Maybe that's too low. But yeah, so gender was sort of the next part of my journey in sort of the 2SLGBTQI plus community, and it really complicated the way that I thought about my body, and I found it very challenging to feel this need to masculinize my body, and the way that sort of intersected with previous habits of disordered eating. And I was really nervous about it. I was nervous about, you know, taking things too far. You know, is this, you know, dysphoria speaking, or is this, you know, disordered eating patterns in my brain that are bubbling back up, where I want that control because I'm feeling like my gender is out of control. So that took a lot of time and energy, and it was tough. But again, I was trying to really just listen to what my body needed, and you know, if I wanted to seek surgery instead to masculinize, then that I could. But you know, once I settled into the sort of sense of gender fluidity, I found this expansiveness where, you know, I could be, you know, anywhere on the spectrum, really. I could really express myself in ways that people see as more feminine or masculine, and both of those felt comfortable to some degree. You know, the extremes of both ends don't always work for me, but you know, I was able to really explore more, and I did feel a lot more comfort in my body once I found sort of the right word for me. And you know what, labels aren't for everyone, and I personally like to choose labels that don't quite tie you down, if you will, because again, I'd like that opportunity to modify. Speaking of which, we should give our soup a taste here. Needs some salt though. So again, you can go through and you can modify, you can make changes as you need to, and I think that's a wonderful part about being a part of this community is, you know, you can, it might not have always been this way, and it might not always be this way for all people, but I feel like there is more of an openness to understanding that people change, and identity shift, and that's okay. You know, you don't always have to be however you identify right now. So, you know, a few years ago, I was exclusively using she, her pronouns because I'd never thought about my gender. You know, something didn't quite feel right there, but, you know, it wasn't something that I had the energy or the time or the mental capacity space to dive into. And so, you know, you don't always have to stick with that, you know, thing that you've decided on, which is lovely, which is wonderful. And so, and so something that as I was coming to my gender euphoria, I started to see food with a lens, again, that was less binary. And a lot of times in the media, and to be frank, from dietitians and people in the health and wellness sort of sphere, often use this terminology that is very binary. You know, it's good or bad. It is cheat day or, you know, rice and chicken and broccoli. And, you know, it's organic or it is conventional. And I started really having trouble with that binary. And it was something that I had discovered before and sort of like, you know, really analyzing diet culture and the way that we are fed this information, especially people who were raised as women and girls, you know, despite identities. Like, I personally was raised to be a girl, so my experience is, as someone who was assigned female at birth, that, you know, the information that I got from the media and my friends was eat less, move more. You know, you're not allowed to have the same portion size as your male friends. It's unseemly to eat large portions. And, you know, even if you're not actively thinking about that, it does have a real impact. And so, yeah, it's interesting how this sort of thoughts of gender and, you know, the way that I was feeling in my own body sort of shifted the way that I thought about food beyond the binary, and thought about food as this expansive thing. You know, it's not good or bad. It can be, you know, let's talk about food in its flavors instead of, is it good or is it bad? You know, is it salty? Is it sweet? Is it creamy? Is it sour or bitter? Is it got lots of umami, you know, that meaty flavor? Talk about textures of food. You know, is it grainy? Is it smooth? Is it sticky or tacky? Does it get stuck in your teeth? All that sort of stuff. So we've got this really expansive vocabulary for food. And again, we sort of have, diet culture and, again, the media, and again, a lot of health organizations have boiled it down to good and bad for your, quote, health. So, yeah, I really encourage you to take this opportunity with this soup to explore food beyond the binary. And that's really what this queer soup for the soul is. And so we're gonna finish up our soup here. I've got some chicken that I've pre-shredded. Again, if you were using lentils, you would have wanted to put them in sort of as you were sauteing, at the end of the saute of the carrots, onions, celery, and garlic. And they would have had to cook with your stock there. But I'm gonna add in my chicken here and just go ahead. And it really just needs to warm up, that's all. And because we don't wanna overcook it, because it's pre-cooked chicken. So yes, make sure your chicken before you're putting it in is pre-cooked. There we go. So it just needs to warm up. And you know what's actually really lovely? You're gonna see it when I pour a bowl, but because of the purple carrot, the soup is actually got sort of a pinkish purple hue to it, which is fantastic. I've never used a purple carrot in this soup before, so that's wonderful. I think this soup has some pride to it. So what I'm gonna do is to make this sort of like a complete meal, I'm gonna cut myself a slice of bread because we don't have a ton of carbohydrate in there. I love carbs. Carbs are amazing. So what I'm going to do is just grab some fresh bread that I have over here. Great. And just cut myself a hearty slice or two. Again, you want this to be filling. You want to make sure that you know, you're really feeling well fed after this meal. And so you can throw some butter, some vegan butter on there, whatever you'd like to add. So I'm just gonna grab a soup ladle here and ladle up a beautiful bowl of soup to share. Great. And it's wonderful that we get this chance to share this together because, like I was saying, queer food is really more about who's at the table. Who is there with you enjoying this meal, right? Who are you breaking bread with? Who have you invited into your home or invited to your virtual party, your virtual dinner party? You know, who's got that privilege, right? Who do you want in your space? Who gives you energy? Yeah, who do you want to give your time to? Time. Oh boy. Don't worry, the video is almost over. Alright everyone, so we made it. The soup is ready to go. And if you want to pair this with something a little bit more substantial than a piece of bread, by all means, please do that. A sandwich, grilled cheese. You can throw a little bit of rice in the soup if you'd like. It's all really up to you. What would bring you food joy today? And so I want us to go through, before we tuck in, before we start eating, I want us to go through a little experiment in mindfulness. And so I want everyone to really soak in all the visuals if that's something that it's available to you. So looking at, you know, all the different pieces coming up out of the soup and seeing all the little fat droplets on the top and, you know, seeing the bowl that it's in, seeing, you know, all the different colors there and maybe taking a little sniff. Smells comforting. And then go ahead and take a bite. And it's really quite lovely in purple. I'm not sure if you're able to see this, but we've made ourselves a purple soup, which is just fabulous. By pride. And yeah, go ahead and have a bite with me. For those of you who do not enjoy the sound of chewing, I am one of you, so I'm deeply, deeply sorry. But I tried to chew as quietly as I could. But I hope you enjoyed this experience. If you want to hear more about, you know, talking about food and queerness, you know, just let us know. Let the MacPhee Center know. You can also find me on Instagram. Right now, I'm sort of in between times, but you can find me at Edible Inquiries. So that's EDIBLEINQUIRY. And you can take a look at some of my posts there if you'd like. But again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really lovely to make this soup with you, and I hope you found it comforting, and hopefully you took a little something